What's up, listeners? Late Afternoon Gaming is finally back, and we're starting a new campaign in Delta Green. We'll spend this session laying the foundation for the game we'll be playing. Enjoy!
I have a couple of things I want to cover before we get started with this session.
Should we first say that Nerf is dead?
We're going to get to that.
Yeah, so first let him cover the things he's going to cover, and then we can ask
or jump in with anticipating maybe what you think I might cover. Mm-hmm. It's been a little while, and we're sorry. What happened was we had a series of things that we knew were coming up from a scheduling standpoint. Like Shepard, we knew was going to move and was changing jobs. I can't even remember what the other stuff was, but we knew that there were a couple of scheduling events on the parts of multiple people, and so we said, okay, we're going to take a short break, and then probably sometime in the late fall, we're going to get back to Curse of Strahd. That didn't happen, because some of the stuff that we thought was going to happen didn't happen as early as we thought, or took longer than we thought.
Yeah, so for example, when I moved, I departed my previous location in November, early November. My stuff, or I didn't get a new place to live in until mid-January. So I was like a month behind the curve from whatever we might have predicted.
Yeah, right. So by the time from a scheduling standpoint it seemed plausible for us to get back together, we then realized we used to record on Saturday evenings. Saturday evenings no longer made sense, so we entered the conversation of, okay, well, when is everybody free? When do we want to do this? And we couldn't find a time.
Yeah, I was on swing shifts at the time, so I was not reliable at all.
Right, and one of my fears, whenever, I'm in some kind of, I don't even want to say gaming group, like any group that does anything on any schedule as adults, if you take a break, people will fill that break with shit, and then when you come back, they'll say, oh yeah, I have like a new obligation now, even if you're planning on coming back the whole time. Anyway, this just got very tricky. Like everybody was busy, old times didn't work, new scheduling conflicts were coming up, and at the end of the day, we could not find a time that worked at all. Mm-hmm. So I regret to announce to our millions of fans that Nerf is not going to be playing with us from here on out. He is extremely busy.
At the very least, not in a regular capacity.
Yeah, still a friend of the group, no issues. He's just not consistent enough to make it to the sessions.
Yes, that is a good clarification. We hope that he will come back and play as much as he can, but he is not going to be a regular player moving forward. So that puts us in kind of an awkward spot in terms of, how do you keep going in a campaign that had 3 players when you lose one? Well, we had agreed with each other early on that if something like this happened, we would not just push on with Curse of Strahd. We would end it, or at least freeze it, and maybe revisit it at some point down the line when we were all available. So we're not going to keep playing Curse of Strahd. And so then, once we came through all of that, we thought, okay, well, if we're going to play something different, and Nerf isn't going to be available, should we try to find someone else? So we were both trying to figure out what we were going to play, and then who else in our group of friends we might want to play it with. And that took time. And we had somebody picked out, and then that fell through as well. So where does that leave us? We have decided to start a new campaign in a different system called Delta Green, which I will explain in a few minutes. And it's just going to be me running with Jack and Shepard playing, potentially with guests. But, the 2 of them are going to be the regulars. And before I get into describing what Delta Green is and why we picked that, I'll kick it over to the 2 of you if you want to add anything.
I was thinking about this earlier. If we're officially ending the Curse of Strahd campaign, I do think we should find time to do a session where our characters die horribly.
Well, that does kind of get in the way of potentially picking it up at a later date.
It's fine. We can retcon it.
We'll definitely think about that.
Yeah, great suggestion, Jack.
Wow.
But I assume, to Duncan's point, we fully anticipate and hope that Nerf will be joining us for some sessions, just not all of them.
It's
Long-time
something.
listeners and super fans will recall that Curse of Strahd was the main campaign going on, but there was a good, 1/5 of our episodes that had nothing to do with it, and it was just Adventurers League stuff. So very likely you'll see him and other people in sort of offshoot sessions like that.
Yes. Yeah, that is, I definitely hope that will be the case, but we will see. But regardless, I did not want to continue a campaign that he was a big part of without him. That just didn't feel right.
Sure. Something I'd like to add, we actually have talked about Delta Green before. I don't remember which one, but there's a table talk in which, Duncan, you describe Delta Green as the X-Files combined with something. Oh, with Sicario.
Yes. Okay, so I'll give a little bit of history here. I think that Delta Green came out in the early 90s, maybe. It was originally a setting for Call of Cthulhu. And so for anyone out there who's read a bit of Lovecraft, most Lovecraft stories end with the protagonist going insane. But there's one story, The Shadow over Innsmouth, where the government learns about this stuff. The United States government finds out that something supernatural is going on and gets involved. And it's very different. And the premise of Delta Green is, what if that happened? What if I think this story took place in the 1920s, what if the government found out and tried to keep it under wraps, but maybe half tried to eradicate it, half tried to benefit from it? And so the result was, as I described, something that's it's kind of like the X-Files mashed with Sicario. It's this mystery-oriented, sort of supernatural government bureaucracy, agency-driven kind of crime thing. The system, or the setting, I should say, became somewhat popular amongst a certain crowd, and eventually they made their own TTRPG system for it, which is still very much like Call of Cthulhu, but it is distinct. The skills are different, and some of the other underlying mechanics are different, but it's still a D100 system, as opposed to...
Yeah, there's no library use skill for some reason.
Well, I played in somebody's campaign once where I took a library science special training, and it was never used, and I was not happy about that. But Delta Green is very cool. It tends to be very investigation-oriented. It tends to be pretty grim and grisly. We have had a lot of fun playing it, and we've played Delta Green quite a bit over the past several years, but never in campaign form. It's always been 1 or 2 shots, and while I've had a lot of fun doing that, I have always wondered what it would be like to run something that had more length to it, especially because in Delta Green, unlike something like D&D where your character tends to become more powerful and more durable and things like that as the game goes on, in Delta Green, they tend to unravel and then ultimately go insane and die.
Those are the lucky ones.
Sounds terrible. I mean, in practice, it's actually a lot of fun, or at least is one of those dividing lines which separates people who are going to enjoy Delta Green from people who aren't. Mm-hmm. This is not a system where, you develop all these incredible capabilities as you go on and ultimately beat the campaign. This is a sort of system where you keep getting exposed to some really bad shit, and you try to make decisions about how to keep it locked away or what to do about it at great personal cost, and maybe you survive, but more likely than not, even if you do, you're so fucked up that you can't really be around your family anymore, or maybe you just get outright killed. So I thought an interesting thing to do before we get started today is to recommend some media to people to kind of put them in the Delta Green mood. So one of my favorite things about Delta Green is not just playing the game or running the game, but also the overall sort of flavor. I am a lover of the X-Files, but I wanted to throw out a couple of movies, books, albums, stuff like that, for a listener who's unfamiliar, they could check this out and it'll kind of put them in the right headspace. So I figure I'll throw one thing out there and then we can just go around and take turns. I've already mentioned the X-Files and Sicario. I think the first one I would recommend is the movie The Mothman Chronicles.
I've been meaning to watch it, and I still haven't.
Mothman. Okay.
Yeah. It's not like the world's greatest movie or anything, but it's very Delta Green. And Shepard, why don't you throw one out there?
One that you recommended that I quite enjoyed was 3 Days of the Condor.
Yeah.
Which is not so much supernatural stuff, so much as just conspiracy and fear and paranoia.
Yes.
It's very good, and it's basically a movie about me, which is another thing I quite enjoyed.
Oh, right. Jack, what do you got?
You already kind of mentioned it, but just to put it out there more explicitly, for anybody who hasn't just read the collected works of H.P. Lovecraft, it's good stuff. He's super racist. You got to go in understanding that he really hates people who aren't white. Yeah, it's very much a product of its time.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's of a time. This is like early 20th century.
I would also put out there that is while true, it doesn't seem
really
to
affect the stories very much. It comes
right.
up.
There are a couple where you go, oh, that's bad. I wish he hadn't said that.
If you're ever curious, if you ever want to get a good chuckle and then kind of feel bad about it, look up H.P. Lovecraft's Cat.
Not on your work computer.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Not on your work machine. I would even beyond the Delta Green thing, a lot of stuff is influenced by Lovecraft. It was a I don't even know, like a genre creator, the cosmic horror thing. I don't know if he's the one who invented it, but he popularized it, or at least it became popular after his death. He wasn't very successful when he was alive, unfortunately for him. But when you go through and read it, you will probably find that a lot of it's kind of familiar, because a lot of stuff now draws inspiration from it. So it's fun in a historical context as well as just being cool stories. I don't know if he's the best writer, but he had a lot of neat ideas.
Oh, and you know what? I want to jump off of that to further explain something that I think I did a bad job with, which is Call of Cthulhu is one of his stories, and some of his more famous stories are referred to as the Cthulhu mythos, where Cthulhu is this one particular elder god monster. Call of Cthulhu is also a very popular TTRPG. I think it is second most popular to D&D and has been for a long time. Call of Cthulhu is cool and fun and, as I said, popular, but it has some problems, and Delta Green isn't just a sort of rewickering of the story or change of setting. It also specifically tries to address a couple of those problems. So, Call of Cthulhu is normally set in the 1920s or 1930s. Like in a Lovecraft story, the protagonists, the player characters, tend to be civilians. They're just, maybe it's a private investigator, or you're a nightclub owner, or, some kind of researcher or something like that. And there will be some supernatural incursion into the world, and the player characters come together to try to banish it or kill it or something along those lines. But from a role-playing standpoint, that can get difficult and confusing. And for instance, given what I just described, if you're some librarian somewhere and in a different state, like a ghost shows up and starts haunting someplace, and so you want to banish it somehow. Well, why? What gives you any license to go into that house? You're not law enforcement. You're not it can be very difficult to credibly get to that location because you just don't have any access. And the other thing is, even if you do, you don't really have any resources because you're just some dude, unless you're rich. And so Delta Green is supposed to solve those problems by giving the characters a motivation to do this stuff. They're part of an agency or a conspiracy that has a stated goal of dealing with these threats. It gives them access because they're part of the government, and whether legally or illegally, they can come up with ways to at least appear to belong wherever they go. They may have some amount of resourcing behind them. You know, you can get your plane tickets paid for, you can get weapons, that kind of thing.
All right, so that's Delta Green.
That's Delta Green.
So one other thing that's probably worth just mechanically, if you're accustomed to D&D, which is the D20 system, and we'll get more into this when we actually start playing, but don't get thrown off by the numbers. Delta Green is a D100 system, so success is determined using a different methodology. It's not difficult,
and lower
it's
is
just
better
different.
if you want a low roll.
Well, and actually, I suspect, at least from an audio podcast standpoint, a D100 system is easier to follow. So D100 is really straightforward. In Delta Green, you have a bunch of different skills. And let's say the skill is handguns or firearms. If Jack's character tries to shoot at something, I would tell him to make a firearms check or roll firearms. He's going to have some amount of points in that skill, as much as 100. I think 80 is at least the max you can start with. But let's say he has a 60 in firearms. He'll roll 2d10 or a d100. I think you have to roll under the skill, right? Because zeros in Delta Green.
The higher the skill is, the more likely you are to get under it. So
right, but my point is, I think it's 0 to 59 is a pass. Because double zero is a crit success. So
Yes,
0 to 59, given that he has 60 in the skill, 0 to 59 is a success, and then 60 to 99 is a failure. Additionally, if you roll doubles, so like I said, 00 or 11 or 22, if you roll doubles underneath, that's a crit success. And if you roll doubles above, so 66, 77, 88, 99, that's a crit fail. So what's nice about this, of course, is you don't have to do any fancy math to determine how likely you are to succeed on something, because the number of points you have in the stat is the same as your percentage, like success of failure, or of passing, I mean. So if you have a 60 in firearms, that means on any given firearms check, you have a 60% chance of making it. That's pretty much how it goes. I mean, there are modifiers that will be added. It's normally modifiers of 10 or 20 plus or minus. So for example, if he has a better sight on his gun, he might get a plus 20 modifier. That is how the D100 system works. And I guess the other important thing to recognize is that I'm trying to remember how many skills Delta Green has. It's probably
it's quite a few.
40.
Yeah.
35. It's considerably more. It's much more granular.
Yeah, I want to say it's 42, but I could be wrong.
And I guess a couple of little other oolies here are, if Jack makes a firearms check and fails, he makes a note of it on his character sheet, and then at the end of that session, he'll roll 1d4, and his firearms skill will improve by that much before the next session. So failures are mechanically useful over time.
And to be clear, that's a per stat thing. If I made a check on every single stat over the course of the session, I would get to add 1d4 to every stat. You don't just get to level 1 per session. So the progression, you don't really level up the same way in Delta Green. As Duncan mentioned earlier, you actually tend to, in a lot of ways, get weaker, but your skills get better. So it balances a little.
Yes, that's a good point. And what Jack is referring to when he says you get weaker but your skills get better, it's usually things like Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green has a sanity mechanic, and then it has some other related mechanics like willpower, and so your mental health declines. Like as you get exposed to this stuff that you shouldn't be exposed to, you tend to go slightly insane. Your willpower, which has a lot to do with your ability to resist mentally. Some of this stuff, those will go down, and as a result of these things, you will wind up leaning on your bonds more. So when you make a character, you select a couple of bonds, meaning strong personal relationships. And if you are hard up for cash, or you need some kind of like human interaction to distract you from something terrible that you saw, or any number of other things like that, your ability to do that stuff, to interact with people in those useful ways, diminishes over time, which then puts even more strain on you. So that'll all become more clear as we go on. But for anyone who's like never heard of this before and is interested in it, if you go to the Delta Green website, and I'm sure if you go to like Drive-Thru RPG as well, the basic rules for the game are free. You know, it's like a lot of these other systems. There's basically a starter pack kind of PDF that shows you enough to get the basics and run an introductory session. And then moving on from that, you can buy the core rule books, which are beautiful. The Delta Green stuff is all very visually interesting. They have great art direction and stuff like that. So highly encourage anyone who's interested to at least download the free introductory material, which is called Need to Know. And if you like what you see, get some of the other resources. I recently picked up a physical Delta Green book for the first time. Actually, it was a gift from Nerf, and it is beautiful. It's easily, like, of all the TTRPG physical stuff I have, it is the best looking physical book I have.
Yeah, I also just got physical Delta Green books for the first time, despite the fact that we've been playing Delta Green for a pretty long time, because I've just been doing it on digital before that. And,
right.
I have no regrets. There are also good Delta Green novels out there.
Mm-hmm. Written largely by the guys who write the game and the modules.
Yeah. So I'll put links to that in the link note, because I can't remember the names right now, but they're actually pretty good.
I think maybe more than any other system I'm familiar with, Delta Green has incredible lore, which is kind of ironic because the whole game is about secrecy. And so the sort of joke within the community is, you know, there are these beautiful source books full of fascinating material that basically have stamped on them, like, but don't tell the players this, they're not allowed to know that. So again, if anyone's curious about this stuff, like, just sitting down and reading the Delta Green source books is fascinating.
Every link I can find to Drive-Thru RPG is broken.
Oh, that's cool.
That's
They were probably owned by Bed Bath & Beyond, who just announced bankruptcy this morning.
nice.
Well, I just bought something on Wargaming Vault yesterday, which is one of the 3 sites. I think it's, you know, there's DM's Guild, Drive-Thru RPG, and Wargaming Vault that are all the same portal, basically. Because I found out that I have a friend who's, like, have you guys heard of Advanced Squad Leader?
No, you mentioned it yesterday, but apart from that, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, so a friend of mine who I worked with, he has since changed jobs, but I'm trying to remember how this even happened. Basically, he had a terrible commute, and one day the commute was so bad that I told him, like, hey dude, I'm running a Dungeon Crawl Classics game. I run a Dungeon Crawl Classics game at my place every Monday evening. If you want to just hang out for a while until the traffic is better, like, you know, you can come over and eat some snacks and play games with us, and you can leave whenever you want. So he did, and I think it was one of those, like, oh, I used to play this stuff when I was a kid, and now it's, you know, 30 years later, and my kids are out of the house, and why don't I get back into this kind of thing? So we've been trying to set something up for a little while now, but he texted me the other day, and I guess there's this squad level tactical war game called Advanced Squad Leader that's usually focused on World War II stuff. And I think the version that people play now came out in 1985, based on what I was reading yesterday. But it's still pretty popular in the wargaming community, and he's going to be near where I am later this month to play. There's a club here that plays pretty regularly. So we both got the books and we're going to go check it out. But it is, the manuals are big 3-ring binders where as equipment gets updated, they will like they were mailing people out revisions, and like a field manual, it would be like a remove page 13 and replace it with this thing I just sent you. So I was trying to find the binders yesterday, and like they're really expensive and sold out everywhere, so I got a digital version. But I digress. Anyway, I wanted to get a couple more rounds in of like Delta Green Media, and then I wanted to explain what we're doing today and roll into that. This is another one that I know people have heard of because I've mentioned it over and over. I think music is a really good way to like set the mood for games like this, and it's one of the nice things about music is it's something that you can appreciate while you're playing or while you are preparing, going through your notes or setting up something for the next session. And the most Delta Green music out there is by this like unknown dude on Bandcamp called Sumatran Black. And I don't even remember how I found this dude, but I absolutely love his stuff.
Probably through Cryo Chamber.
Probably. Cryo Chamber is another really, really good...
it's like a channel of people. There's a bunch of people who all contribute.
And I'm not sure what the deal with Cryo Chamber is. I think it's like a collective of related artists, because sometimes when you look at the album information, it seems like they collaborate a lot on tracks or albums. Cryo Chamber is more ambient than Sumatran Black. Sumatran Black is a little more like active, if that makes sense. Like Cryo Chamber is a little more drone, whereas Sumatran Black has enough going on that I would listen to it. I might listen to it if I'm just putting a song on for any other reason. Best album, I think it's called Transmissions. It's got like a picture of a dark street in the middle. But he's got a lot of great albums, so highly recommend that. We're not going to play his stuff like during the podcast because we don't have that kind of permission, but I may very well be listening to it while I run. Shepard?
I know you mentioned it earlier, but Sicario as a film, I think it's a really good, much like 3 Days of the Condor, there's nothing supernatural that happens in it, but it's this idea of like, there's no good guys. If you watched that film and thought there were good guys, you're wrong. There's different interests and people have goals, but everyone is bad. And a lot of anyone who's good is really just caught in the crossfire. It's an interesting take, and it's an interesting mood that I think reflects the kind of things that go on in Delta Green a lot. The kinds of things that'll happen in like a good Delta Green game to me are like the agents doing bad things for good reasons, or reasons they think are good and might not be. And I think that creates a really compelling story, and I think Sicario is a very good example of a film version of that.
Yeah, completely agree. Jack?
I'm going to put out there Darkest Dungeon. It's a game that...
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, it's well-known-ish, I guess. It's like a turn-based strategy game that is very difficult, but just incredibly bleak and very directly Lovecraft-inspired, with a fantastic soundtrack by Stuart Chatwood. There's a second game that I haven't played. The original one came out probably almost 10 years ago now, but really good game. And it has the tone of a Delta Green setting where it's very like there's no hope. Is kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of very similar things happening. I think you might have said this, but people getting like psychological disorders from the things that are happening, and you have to like put them on ice for a little bit to have them heal from the terrors of what's going on. So. Some very, very, very similar things to Delta Green.
And actually, just talking about games that are Lovecrafty, Bloodborne by From Software.
Of course.
Also a great game. If they ever release an updated version that's not locked to 30 frames a second, I will probably play it again.
Oh, I'll definitely play it again. I had a ton of fun playing it last year on PS4. So just let me know. Keep a lookout, and I'll be there with you.
Yeah, one day.
I think maybe in the show notes or through some other avenue, we'll put out like a compiled list. This is actually something I've been meaning to do for a while. It's kind of like a mood list of.
This is perfect for the subreddit.
If only I had some place to put this. I just can't find.
If only, indeed.
Yeah, I just can't find the place. But yeah, a list of movies and albums, podcasts, books, and so on. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, Delta Green is about conspiracy, investigation, the supernatural, bureaucracy, sacrifice. I don't know. I think it's a very narratively compelling system. Before we get into the session, I have one last note to say about the system. These are, obviously, I didn't take great notes coming up to this. This is kind of occurring to me as I go, but you don't roll as much when you play Delta Green as you do in, say, something like D&D. There is a mechanical reason for this. So there are different interpretations of this rule, but the rulebook says something along the lines of, unless you're under some kind of pressure, like time pressure or stress, if you have points in the skill, that's normally enough to succeed. So for example, if your character has points in like craft microelectronics or something like that, and we find some kind of weird piece of like signal encryption equipment, and the character in question is trying to analyze it and see what it is. If he's not under the gun while he's doing that, I'm not going to have him make a check. If he has sufficient points in the skill, I'll just tell him. This is nice because it doesn't interrupt the narrative flow of the game, and given how granular the skills are, like, it's nice to know that if you've invested points in that skill, then if that comes up, you're likely to make a difference there. However, once stress gets involved, once we're in like a combat situation or something like that, it's going to be rolls. But even then, it's relatively fast compared to something like D&D.
Yeah, the way I've always interpreted that is that it's kind of like that idea of taking 20 that I talked about a long time ago, where, you'll get it right eventually. And so maybe if you've got a 70 in a skill versus a 30 in a skill, the guy with a 70 will get it done faster, but they'll both get it done. And so if there's no time pressure, then, it's just a question of how many tries it takes, not whether they will succeed.
Yes, I think those are conceptually similar. I'm definitely it's very important to me when we play games to keep the momentum up, and rolling more often than not, or excessive rolling anyway, does not, meet that end. Okay. So, does anyone else do either of you have any like introductory stuff you want to get out of the way before we start what we're doing today?
I just have one comment to make, just since you mentioned Bed Bath & Beyond. It is funny, the kind of similar to the GameStop situation, there was a small but incredibly dedicated group of investors who really believed that was going to really take off, and despite, massive media coverage saying, hey, they're going to go bankrupt, hey, they're going to go bankrupt, hey, they're failing, hey, they're about to go bankrupt, and people were saying nope, and there's a lot of butt hurt going on now now that they've actually declared bankruptcy. It's funny to read.
Yeah, I didn't read much into it. I just saw the headline, which was saying they declared bankruptcy because they failed to come to grips with online sales and how much that was affecting them, and they didn't adapt and ended up dying.
It is there's a couple of different kinds of bankruptcy, and the really bad, you're done bankruptcy is Chapter 7 bankruptcy. This is Chapter 11, which is a sort of reorganize, reconsolidate, and try to come back kind of bankruptcy, which, allegedly they're planning on trying to stay open, but still not great.
Jack, expert on bankruptcy from personal experience.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Donald Trump went bankrupt and then became president, so anything can happen.
Therefore, are you saying Bed Bath & Beyond is going to be the next president?
Yes.
That's a bold claim.
All right.
Okay. And hey, I want to hit something one more time. Sumatran Black is so good and so unknown that many of his YouTube videos have 0 views.
Oh,
Not-
I wouldn't have
not-
guessed
not
that.
like-
I didn't know
a
that
handful.
I listened to his stuff on Bandcamp, but didn't even know he had a YouTube channel.
Yeah, 0 views.
We have a YouTube channel. Everyone has a YouTube channel.
So yeah, my point is like get in on the ground floor. All right. So moving on. Here's what we're doing today, and we're kind of stealing this from Pretending to Be People, which is an excellent Delta Green podcast that I listen to a lot of, and then I don't remember when I stopped listening to it, but I didn't stop because it's bad. I stopped for some reason I can't remember. They did this thing, and I don't think they recorded it, but where as a group they sat down at the beginning and they built their world, or at least the town that the campaign was going to take place in and all of the player characters were going to be residents of. They sat down and they built that town together, and it was very cool because it wasn't just the handler, which is what you call a dungeon master in Delta Green. It wasn't just the handler describing everything to them. It was a location they already had a pretty good understanding of because they built it together. So we thought it would be fun to do that ourselves. And so I don't have a clear plan for how to run this other than that I have a big pad of paper in front of me, and I was going to ask some questions and just sort of sketch some things out. And then we're not actually playing our first session for 3 weeks based on the schedule that you guys filled out. So that gives us a little bit of time to take these notes, and I can make a map out of it to share with you. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, rather than trying to like draw a map in real time, which is just not something I want to do, we can do it this way. So, okay, so to start, I don't have a state in mind, but I do think we should pick a specific state because some of the stuff you're going to wind up doing isn't going to be local, and so it's useful to know roughly where you're coming from. So we should pick a state. Other things to think about are, I think it would be nice to, from a scale standpoint, have this be like a small city, and large enough that just about anything you might want, there will be some version of it there, but maybe not more than a few, if that makes sense. Doesn't mean we need to map out every street or anything like that, but at the neighborhood level, we should have it pretty figured out. And yeah, that's pretty much what I was thinking to start. And Shepard, I did read through the stuff that you submitted. I like a lot of the ideas. I don't think I want to go as deep in the world building session stuff on the backstory or the underbelly stuff, because I want, I guess, a little more. I think I want to keep more of that like under wraps on the handler side, if that makes sense.
Sure. I'm fine with that. Are you okay with using like the general idea of like what things look like at present?
Well, go ahead and sketch that out for us.
So Duncan and I had talked about doing this specific thing a long time, like a couple months ago. And so I had written up like a 3-page summary of a setting idea. So my campaign setting idea is a place called Golden River, South Dakota. Its location is 44.71 degrees north, 100.93 degrees west. I'm not using hours and minutes because I forget how to do it. Population about 30,000. And basically the town came about, there was an earthquake back in the 1800s, and this group built a dam there by the Missouri River to stop it from creating these like massive floodplains, and then a town grew around it. So that's basically the idea, and it ended up being, it's like just northwest of Pierre, and it ended up being a much bigger city than almost every other thing in the area. That's the basic idea of where this town comes from, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so I'm definitely down to use the information that you just described there, but I want to make sure that we constrain it somewhat in size. So just to keep it small enough that you can know it, you know what I mean?
So I think 30,000 is a good population size for that. So that means that like a graduating class for high school would be about like 500 to 600 people.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That'll work.
Yeah. I've done some population math before. When I was trying to figure out how many wizards are in the wizarding world of Harry Potter, and so the populations are a funny thing.
How many are there?
I think there was like 1,500 or something like that. It's very small.
A lot of inbreeding in the wizarding world.
Yeah. Well, it's because you look at like the number of students per year at Hogwarts, and then if you assume that every wizard lives to be like 150, I think it was more than 1,500, but it was like, I think it was less than 10,000 total. It's very small.
Did you take into account that Hogwarts is not the only school?
It's the only school in Magical Britain. So I was saying that's like how many people are in like Harry Potter's wizarding world. Yeah, there's probably more people in general, but it's still a very, very, very small community.
Can you hit me with those coordinates again?
44.71 degrees north, 100.93 degrees west. I think that's what it was. I'm going to maps now.
Yeah, I'm looking along the Missouri River, and I'm trying to find out.
If you look at where Pierre is, it's just northwest of that. Because there's that branch of the Missouri River that goes west, just to the northwest of it. It breaks off from the south of that. So the river is made up. It's not real. That's like the divergent point in our world's history because of this earthquake that caused like some seismic activity, changed the topography a little bit, and then one of these little, I think it's the Minneconjou, the Minneconjou Creek became like much larger to the point where they needed to dam it up to the north end.
Gotcha. Okay, I like it. Okay. Jack, you haven't said much yet, so I'll give you the mic first. Assuming we're starting in this place where you're kind of split off from the Missouri River. There's a dam probably about halfway through the town, which I would assume is also our source of electricity. Right? We're gonna have like hydroelectric power.
Yeah.
Yes. So the way it worked in the story is basically they built the dam, and then a couple years later they spent a bunch of money converting it to a hydroelectric plant. This is near the end of the 19th century. And so it provides all the power for this town, and then also provides a lot of power for most of South Dakota.
It's a big dam.
Yes, it's a pretty big dam.
Yeah, it's a lot of flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also...
We'll do some calculations on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
South Dakota is also not like the world's most populous state.
Mm-hmm.
Although maybe it should be. It's beautiful.
Oh, sure. But yeah, it's not... like, obviously, it's nowhere near the size of the Hoover Dam, but it also doesn't have, like, as much stuff around it as the Hoover Dam does to power.
Okay. So what do we think, what's the industry here?
So the original, again, idea from here is that the people who built this, it was a construction company that basically just built a town around this project, and then they kept working there. So what they do is a lot of infrastructure, and they ended up building all the roads to this place, building bridges across the Missouri River, and then obviously the power is huge, and then all of they're basically a big infrastructure town that provides a lot of that kind of work for the state, because they're very centrally located in the state as well.
Okay, but then I guess as a result, if a lot of people are working in professions like that, they're not home that much.
Some of the groups aren't, but then because of the cheap power, a lot of things that would have been somewhere else in South Dakota ended up moving here. And again, this is now one of the bigger cities in South Dakota. Again, there are not a lot of big cities in South Dakota. So any business that's going to be like in a lot of the states near it ended up moving here. So as time went on, because again, I think I said this town was incorporated in like the late 1800s. A lot of businesses ended up moving here and kind of putting their headquarters here.
Sure. Okay, so both of your player characters, we're going to say, are they from here? Did they move here? Maybe that's a good place or a good way to tackle this.
My guy's from here.
Yeah, I'll have my guy be from there as well. Why not?
Okay. Well, and let's get a brief description. Jack, can you tell us about your character?
Yeah. His name is Tim Bars. He's gonna be the brains of this operation. He's kind of like a short, not particularly fit guy. Like not like immobile, but not ripped either. He's stocky. He's an engineer. I have Lockheed on my sheet. I might change that to something that's I don't know if we want. Lockheed's headquarters is in this city. They moved there.
We can make up one.
Yeah, whatever. He's an engineer.
Northrop
on more
Martin.
the research side. Has a lot of academic background and contacts. But is he is man, he's a half-orc barbarian. His name is Eisen. I don't know. I haven't done a lot of thinking about how he's going to be in terms of interaction, because I prefer to kind of develop that as we play.
Sorry, what did you say his profession was?
He's an engineer.
Engineer, gotcha. Okay.
But the his main attributes are he's like a short, pudgy guy who takes care of himself. Like he looks okay for what he is. He's smart. He's charismatic. Not very strong. And he's very curious. And the reason he's in Delta Green is partly altruism. Yes, he's he wants to protect people. He wants to protect his family. He wants people to be able to live in safety. But he's also just curious about it.
You guys, we're going to start you for the first time not in Delta Green.
Oh my. Okay, well then that's going to be why he jumps at it. Is he's like, this is new. This is interesting. This doesn't make sense to me, and I want it to make sense.
Okay,
he wants the knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Very cool.
I'm glad you're playing a short king.
Yeah. Short Kang.
All right, Shepard. How about your player character?
What time period are we playing in?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, right. I'd given some confusing inputs on this. I want to go.
Because if you're going to say, "Oh, it's the 30s," then obviously that's a
no. It's not the 30s.
Things.
It's going to be. Well, actually,
the 2030s.
I want input on this. I'm considering doing it in the 90s because I basically don't want to deal with cell phones or current events.
Yeah, that works.
I think that is I think you get it. I think you have an idea of what things were like in the 90s. And so it's not foreign doing it in the 30s. But it's basically now, but information is harder to come by and communication is trickier.
Okay, so we're doing it in the 90s.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as long as both of you are okay with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So let's say this is set in 1995.
Okay, give me 1 second to look something up.
The Missouri River did, as far as I know, exist in 1995.
Yeah, but we didn't have electricity, so the dam doesn't make sense.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, so my character, his name is Simon Redding. He is a detective with Golden River PD. His physical description, he's slightly tall and thin to the point of being gaunt. He's not ugly, but he kind of looks like a skeleton, and so people wouldn't necessarily call him attractive. His thinness is due to his all whiskey diet, because he's a functioning alcoholic.
Because he's a detective and so was obligated to be an alcoholic.
So his deal generally is that he we'll have to work this a little more specifically, but his parents were part of some weird collective group when he was a kid, and so he kind of grew up in a new age cult kind of thing. He was able to get out of it thanks to his older brother Damian Redding when he was in high school. Shortly thereafter, his parents both died in a car crash, and he has always associated those two things as the group killed him or killed them. Is that true? He has no proof, but that's just something that has messed with him forever. So he enlisted in the army, became an MP, left the army after a couple years, and then came back to Golden River, got his degree in criminal justice at Golden River State University, and then became a detective. Became a cop and then became a detective with Golden River PD. he's adapted to violence through his time in the army, and he drinks a lot.
For those of you who don't play Delta Green, adapted to violence means you don't have to make a sanity check when you see some form of extreme violence because you are already fucked up enough by having seen a lot of it that doesn't bother you as much anymore. But it introduces other stat problems for you.
Just sort of, we've discussed the tone of Delta Green versus D&D. Just to give you a more specific idea, the two things that you can be adapted to are violence and helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, this is another good concept we should address. Although I know, based on hard experience, that you cannot just declare what you want the tone of your campaign to be, I would like to give you an idea of what I would like the tone to approximate. So I do intend to make this somewhat serious and dark. However, in-character humor, I think, makes a lot of sense. So, honestly, I thought slightly more serious than the Curse of Strahd campaign is kind of what I'm going for. Where, some things are obviously important and you want to be serious about, but in the spaces in between, you probably joke around together, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sure. Tim is a big slapstick enthusiast.
Good. He's a clown. He's a birthday clown on the weekends.
Right.
So this is nothing to do with Delta Green, but I actually, one of my friend's parents actually went to clown college. That is a real thing. That I didn't know existed, but I know somebody who went to clown college.
That's so weird to me. But I guess
it's bizarre.
I've never understood the appeal of clowns, and I'm not even talking scary clown stuff here. I'm just saying I don't get it. I don't think clowns are fun or funny. Even if they weren't creepy, they would still be weird and off-putting. But anyway, so listeners, if you didn't already know this, you can't just tell people what the tone of your campaign is going to be. You got to lay down material that actually makes them feel that way.
One of the big benefits of in-person gaming, which unfortunately is not really viable for us, is that you can kind of set the tone with music that everybody's listening to, as opposed to what we're doing now, where everybody's probably listening to their own stuff. But my proposal is that at the beginning of the session, we should pick an album, and we can announce to the viewers as well, so they can listen to it. And we can all listen to the same thing.
Yes, I like that a lot. Let's do that.
Probably just pick something from Cryo Chamber. By the way, I did look at the YouTube channel for Sumatran Black, and the description of the channel, but I'm going to pull it up to make sure I don't get this wrong. But
he describes his genre as necro chill.
Necro chill, yes, which I love. It's a fantastic name.
It's also a dead-on description.
Yeah.
But yeah. So let's do that. So starting next session, I will, we'll decide maybe during table talk, and then kick off the session all listening to the same album. Okay, so we know who you guys are, and we can develop some deeper integrations into the community as we build it. So what kind of engineer is Tim Bars?
He's mechanical by education, but he's multidisciplinary in practice.
Okay, but professionally, what does he do?
Well, I had him working for Lockheed, so he was going to be defense. Which, if we change the company, that'll probably stick around. He does he's developing new tech is what he actually does, and then he's somewhat involved in the testing side as well. But he's mostly R&D.
Okay.
Yeah, and this being such a small town, in the scope of how big cities might be, like I said, population 30,000-ish. Simon Redding is one of not very many detectives. There's not 100 detectives in this town.
Sure.
So I'm trying to figure out if we were playing in modern times, I had a perfect idea for exactly what his timeline was. But he might not be adapted to violence because I can't find a good army operation that happened in a time frame that makes sense based on who this character is. Based on us being in 1995. Maybe. Could we make it like 1997? Is that
using
okay?
the goal for.
I was gonna say, well, if it's 1997, then we're okay.
Yeah.
Maybe yes, no.
With respect to what? His adapting to violence?
No, whether it's 1997.
Oh, no, it's 1995.
Okay, all right, then. All right, I'll figure something out.
I'm imagining this place as, I guess it has a kind of a thriving but commercial downtown. So pretty like new storefronts, many of which have apartment buildings or apartments over the top, trendy restaurants, stuff like that. Because it's one of those deals where, as you described it, Shepard, this is sort of a like a corporate hub in the sense that a lot of companies that probably have infrastructure that sprawls across this whole part of the country, like they tend to have their main offices here due to its central location, and so you have a lot of reasonably well paid like office workers and managers, as well as a pretty steady flux of worker bee types coming through all the time. And so where you have these small to medium-sized office buildings, you're also going to have a lot of restaurants to support, apartments to support those people, stuff like that. And so and then stores are going to spring up there. And so I think the central part of the city sort of looks like that. It's white collar commercial stuff. And then as you get farther out from the center, you have areas that are more industrial, like, for example, the dam itself. And then along the waterfront, you're going to have a lot of other restaurants and more expensive apartments that have views of the river. And the farther out you get away from the city, closer to wilderness, you start getting away from apartment buildings and into like actual residential neighborhoods of varying levels of income, and then larger stores in some cases, your kind of Walmarts and Targets, grocery stores, that sort of stuff, sporting goods stores, because there's a lot of sporting going on here. What do you guys think about that basic sketch?
So, are you interested in the town layout portion of what I had written in my idea?
You're talking about how there's basically a significant elevation change halfway through the town based on the fissure that necessitated the dam, and the socioeconomic split that goes along with the physical one.
Sort of, yes. You've mostly captured.
Well, I mean, go ahead and unpack. What I don't want to do in this session is say, reference the document that we haven't shared with the listeners.
No, that's to the mystery.
So, why don't you go ahead and describe what you're talking about?
So what I had laid out in the town is that, so the dam is like a couple miles north of the town itself. Originally, they were living right at the dam construction site, but as time went on, like the place that made more sense to build was a couple miles south. But the river that comes from the dam runs north to south approximately, and so that splits the area in two. And then during there's a public works project that the group of people, whatever that company is, took on during the Great Depression, that built a waterfall essentially from that river. Basically, like, instead of it being like a sloping hill, they just moved part of the hill north, and now it's just a drop off. And then they started building stuff at the bottom of the waterfall. So you've now got this town that's split four ways. There's the northern and southern parts, which are separated by elevation, and then the eastern and western parts that are separated by the river itself. And then, so each one of those chambers of the heart of this city, kind of took on its own identity and some of the things that it provides. Now, the southern two chambers, excuse me, had a lot more room to grow. And so if anything new is being built there, it's being built in the southern part. That was what I had originally designed for this town.
Yeah, we can go with that.
So you're saying that we're starting off not in the organization. I assume that means we're completely ignorant, right? Like, it's not that we're aware of it and just
Right.
not involved. We just don't know what's happening at all.
Yep, you are not aware of anything supernatural. You've never heard of Delta Green.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. You're completely ignorant of,
Ignorant, some would say.
yes, of both the things that the program was made to address and the program itself.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that I think they focused on in Pretending to Be People, which I think is a good model to follow, is what are the local attractions? What are the things everyone knows in town? What are our favorite restaurants? How do we know each other? What are the things that we have in common? Those kinds of things.
Sure. Well, I'd like to circle back to, kind of what I initially proposed, that I don't remember if either of you addressed. Like the idea of having a kind of commercial center of town, or, maybe it's not the center, it's one of these quadrants that you outlined, Shepard. Like, does what I described earlier make sense? Or do you want to change it?
Yeah, so I think what you said earlier makes sense. It's just that the expansion is sort of limited to the southern portion of it because
Sure.
that's where there's room to grow.
Okay.
And then one of the big commercial areas now is also in the southwest. That's where Golden River State University is.
Well, before we get to the university, I think let's lay down some major infrastructure here. So running north to south. The dam is to the north. The newer stuff is to the south. Somewhere between those is the waterfall. I think I want a bridge that goes a bridge north of the waterfall and south of the waterfall. So those are like the major, cars can get over those bridges. And each of those also has one of those things, it has the gated off biker and pedestrian component. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then the stuff that I was describing before, we're going to say is on the relatively affluent eastern side around the waterfall, or below. People, the more wealthy people want to be able to see the waterfall, and so on the east side, south of the waterfall, is where a lot of these corporate headquarters buildings are, and that's where a lot of the, at least in the daytime, that's where kind of the busiest part of the city is.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think on the northeast side, or somewhere in the north, is where the old money of Golden River is.
Yes.
Because before that waterfall got built, that's where everything was on the north side. The southern expansion happened after.
It's primarily not residential, though. This is sort of where the older and more expensive stores and restaurants tend to be. It's very expensive to get a house on the riverfront until you get farther south where the new construction is. For the most part, those are apartments or office buildings. And then the west side is a little more, of course, waterfront property is always going to be expensive, but as you get, just out of view of the river on the west side, it's less expensive property, more industrial, or just, lower rent housing and stuff like that.
Okay.
So Golden River State University, what is their mascot?
I hadn't thought of that yet.
The Redskins.
No.
The
let me think about it for a
snakes.
sec.
It's 95. It should be something extremely insensitive given its proximity to multiple reservations.
That makes sense.
So it was not built in 95.
So we could even get more insensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, the Golden
It's
River
got to be. It's got to be something that isn't already taken.
The Bearcats, the Asian Bearcats.
Let's just look up a list of interesting animals. What do we got here?
Red pandas, the Golden River red pandas.
Have you guys seen a binturong before?
No.
No, what is
How's
that?
that spelled?
It's BINTURONG. also known as the Asian Bearcat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I've seen these. They're like insane, aren't they?
Yeah, they look like they're on crack.
Is Bearcats available? That
I want
I don't know.
I want to say I've heard of this as a mascot before, but maybe I'm crazy.
Bearcat.
Bearcat
University
mascot.
of Cincinnati.
yeah, Cincinnati.
Well, not that like that's a restriction though. I mean, how many universities have tigers? Like 6.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to have it be something unique though.
Like the cat bears.
Cat bear. Yeah. The owl bears. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at it. There's multiple universities that use the Bearcat as a mascot. That's a shame.
Okay, let's do something else.
I'm linking the Binturong though. Just good stuff. The Golden River Elder Gods.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they will be the Shoggoths. Do people ever use insects as mascots? I feel like they don't.
I don't think so.
That could be. What's a cool insect?
I feel like people use like wasps.
Yeah, like the
how about
hornets or whatever.
lizards? Are lizards taken?
Yeah, we could be the newts. Or
The
salamanders.
iguanodons.
How about salamanders?
I'm down with salamanders. Golden River salamanders.
Done. All right.
Is that not taken?
No. Sure, I don't think anyone has that.
Yeah, it doesn't look.
Nope. We're
Salus
good.
University
Nothing.
is
Yeah,
the only thing
nothing.
I'm seeing.
Yeah,
All right.
nothing major. Golden River
Salamanders.
Salamanders.
Nice. I'm in.
What are their colors?
I mean, it's got to be gold. The place is called Golden River. Although there is no gold here at
Because
all.
the salamanders ate all of it.
Exactly. It's just called Golden River, but there's no gold. But the fact that it's in
which
the name.
opens the question: what do they call the waterfall if not golden showers?
Golden River Falls.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess their colors are gold and
Golden black. That's a common-ish coloration for a salamander.
okay.
Or like
Golden
a darkish
black.
Oh, is it
brown.
really? Golden black. Golden brown is just kind of
Yeah.
Okay, and the campus is where did we say? It's to the south.
on the southwest side.
Southwest. Okay. So what is Golden River State known for? Big agricultural school or?
No, engineering, I think.
Engineering.
Because, like, the whole industry here, or, like, this town is based on infrastructure, engineering, those kinds of things.
A lot of civvies.
Right, yeah. Yeah, civil engineering.
So like engineering, communications.
Yeah. Obviously, they've got other stuff, but that's what they're better known for. It's not, like, a huge school.
So we could, from that, we can guess that the Golden River Salamanders probably not a very successful team.
No, absolutely not. Because this is definitely seen as, like, an actually academic institution that they have a sports program, but it's just, it's there.
All right. So around the campus, then we're gonna have, there will be an arena. They'll have they'll have a stadium or a couple of small stadiums.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, the stadium is way too big because it's like it's a project with all the construction companies and everything in the area. Like, it was this big, like, joint project. So the stadium, it's one that seats like 25,000 people, which is just way too big. That's almost the entire town.
So even when they have a good turnout, it looks pathetic.
Yeah, it's bad.
I'm trying to think of a good name for the stadium.
I figured it would be named after somebody. But again, if we're not going with any of the history that I developed, I don't have any names of people who are important for this city. Or because I mean, most other stadiums, if they're not named after a person, they're named after like the company that sponsored them, Citigroup Stadium or whatever.
I was trying to think of a good salamander-related name. TBD. We'll come back to that. Okay, but yeah, so around the campus, we would have probably like cheaper grocery stores, cheaper restaurants, a lot of takeout stuff, bookstores, that kind of thing.
Tons of bars.
Bars, yeah, especially divier ones.
Pizza
like-
joints. Yeah, all the stuff that you need around a
Typical
college.
off-campus stuff.
You also need cheap, like, apartments.
Yes, true. Housing. This is not a commuter school because there's not enough stuff nearby. Like, there's a strong both on and off campus presence here, but most of the people who go to school here live in Golden River.
Right. Well, and again, because this is such an infrastructure-heavy town, and it's got a long history, a successful history. There's a lot of like communication and cooperation between the university and the way I'd written it. It's like one group that owns a bunch of different companies that all do various infrastructure projects. So they're very big in working together of like internships and construction projects, and so they're always building more stuff.
Okay, so getting away from the university, what else is big here? What do we got?
So there's got to be something like entertainment wise. Now it is South Dakota, so it's like uninhabitable outside for like half the year. But so there needs to be like indoor things to do. There also needs to be a big snow plowing. They don't really get like lake effect or anything. They do get snow. It's just usually
I think it gets very cold. I don't think like by the inch they get a lot of snow.
Yeah. But anyway, so there needs to be like some indoor recreation.
Okay, but
so I think
let's make a big
there needs to be a big mall.
Yeah. So that'll be south of the waterfall on the west side.
Yeah.
What's a good mall name? We'll just call it the Riverfront Mall.
And this is like the biggest mall in South Dakota as well.
Yeah, this is big. It's a big indoor mall. And it has a significant amount of, like all the parking is on the west side because the east side abuts the river. And so it has a really good view. And so there are many of the restaurants, instead of having a conventional food court, the restaurants are on the eastern face of the mall. So you can look out over the river.
Right.
But it'll have a bunch of different stores in it, which I think the stores themselves are probably not that important. We get it, it's a mall. But it'll have other like activity-based stuff. There will be
bowling alley,
rooms,
movie theater,
bowling alley, laser tag.
Ooh, laser tag.
Oh yeah, which is of course where you're going to sharpen your skills when we do our home
That's how
scenes.
I became adapted to violence.
Right.
You're just having like horrible breakdowns in the middle of a laser tag game.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is also the place where like this is where all the high schoolers get their like part-time jobs, and a bunch of people at the college work there part-time.
Yeah, I think this is also, especially in the winter months, this is where a lot of people hang out. Like this is where you will find high schoolers and probably a lot of college students just spending their free time.
Right. Yeah, and so there's a big focus on not just shopping but entertainment.
Okay. So Tim Bars, his office, I guess, is right across the river from the mall in that kind of corporate headquarters area. So where does Tim Bars go to lunch? What does that area look like? What are his spots?
Cuisine.
Because he probably makes a good amount of money too.
No,
What's a day in the life? So when he wakes up to his like sunlight alarm clock.
Well, I'm already up. My sun lamp comes on, but
I'm in the gym doing my.
Oh my god, there's an earthquake going on in the unit above me. Yeah, so he's Tim Bars is an excellent cook, but he does enjoy not cooking. He's good at it, but he doesn't like doing it. So he's a big greasy spoon guy. But there's we'll say that there's a couple of good spots around for just like good old-fashioned American breakfast food. Just like pancakes and bacon and shit.
Nice.
You'll get your scrambled eggs, and he will very often, like, that's what he's doing, and that's a contributing factor to his weight, is that he loves some diner food.
So where does he live? I guess I should ask that. We know roughly where he works. Where does he live?
He is, I'm gonna say, in the he's not in like the money district, but he's looking to go there. Like long term, he would like to get a better area, but he's in some of the like newer developments that he's just like he doesn't even have a house. I'll say he lives in an apartment building with aspirations to get a nice home sometime in the near future.
Does he live in like one of the off-campus apartments? It's full of college students.
Yeah, definitely. And he tries to go to parties with like the college students, but he's
How old is
just getting to that age where it's like very visually obvious, or starting to become visually obvious that he's not in college.
So he's like almost 30. Mm-hmm. Getting to the point where it's very clear that yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I like that. So you live in an off-campus apartment. Do you drive to work, or since you can just basically you're like maybe a couple miles away, you could bike. You could bike across the bridge.
Yeah, we'll say it's a walkable-ish city. I have a car. I use it if I'm going out of town. Mm-hmm. But if it's in town and I'm not gonna be like bringing a bunch of stuff with me to or from, then I've got like a mountain bike.
Nice. Okay, so your Greasy Spoon Diner, is that close to the office or close to home?
There's a couple around. My favorite spot is one near campus. I guess we'll say it's near the apartment building.
Okay. And it is called
Stella's.
Nice. Okay.
I like it because they play Maya Mane on loop all day.
Wow.
Was she big in the mid-90s?
I have no idea. Maybe.
The answer is no.
Huge. Okay, so you go to Stella's Diner, you get some breakfast, you bike to work. You work in a corporate office at some fictional defense contractor like Lockheed Grumman. What about around the office? Do you go to work, just bang out your 8 hours and leave, or do you wander sometimes?
So since I'm like an R&D kind of guy, we have resources at the office, but I will frequently be leaving the office to hit up like libraries or actually the university. I work with the university a lot to get new information as needed if there's like some technical detail that we just don't have on hand right then. Mm-hmm. So I'm in and out of the building frequently just for like data acquisition.
Okay. All right. What do we think the public transit situation is like in Golden River?
I think they just have a good bus system. They're not going to have any rail or like a subway or anything.
Yeah.
So I think they just have a robust bus system.
I imagine that the university in particular, like pretty much if you are going to or from the university, it's easy for you to catch a bus. And if you're a student, you use your ID. And if you're not, you just pay, some small fee.
Yeah, there's some sort of like, you sign up for a yearly card thing.
Sure. But yeah, to keep the city more walkable. Okay, so let's shift gears for a second. And Jack, I'm going to come back to you in a minute to talk about Tim's extracurricular activities. But moving over to Simon, where is the police station?
So, I think there's two. The original, like the old one, is on the northeast side. That's been around for like forever. It's a historic building. But since that's basically like a satellite office now, and the main police station is on the southwest side. Southwest chamber, but on like the northern end of it.
Okay, so this is just like north of the mall. It's like just south of the waterfall.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So where does Simon live? Take us through a day in the life.
So Simon's gonna live. Where'd you say like the cheaper housing is? Is that on the east side?
Yeah, the cheaper housing is all over. Or no, it's on the west side. It's all over the west side. Where
okay.
That's where the campus is. That's all the way to the south, kind of halfway up, close to the waterfall. There's the Riverfront Mall, and then even north of that, there's the more industrial area closer to the dam.
Okay, yeah. So he's gonna live on the west side, not too far away from the police station.
Okay.
And he has an apartment. Nothing fancy. He's single.
Okay. So you wake up at your apartment. What does a morning look like for Simon?
So he also bikes to work, but it's mostly because he keeps getting pulled over for drunk driving. And because he's a cop, they keep not like doing anything about it. But if he gets one more, like he knows, like they're gonna stop ignoring it.
Okay.
So he tries to only drive professionally, and then otherwise he rides his bike everywhere now. He does have a car. That's how he kept getting DUIs, unreported. So yeah, he lives probably within like 2 or 3 miles, or no, I mean probably within 1 mile of the police station. So his day in the life, he bikes to work. You know, he's driving around a company car, a police car, for work. And then he'll bike home.
But he's plainclothes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what about the station? So this is the new police station.
Right. New is a relative term. It is the newer of the two, but like I said, the old one is historic and was built in like the late 1800s.
Right, but you said this is a pretty small department.
Relatively small, yeah.
And I will need to explore later kind of what your relationships are with other people in the department.
Sure.
But,
dicey is the short answer.
So, where do you get your meals? Where do you buy your groceries? Kind of what is Simon's day-to-day relationship with the town of Golden River, or the city of Golden River? So
he's not quite a recluse, but he's not the most outgoing guy in the world. So the place he frequents the most is the bar that's like right across the street from him. But like he doesn't, his only social activity or vaguely social activity apart from drinking at that bar is he plays golf.
Well, let's talk about this bar for a minute. So what kind of bar is it?
Just like it's an Irish pub.
Irish pub. Okay. Name?
It's something really typical. Oh, something.
Oh, Shamrocks.
Oh, Shamrocks. Oh, that's perfect.
Oh, Shamrocks. That's good.
I love that. So yeah, he goes to O'Shamrocks all the time. Yeah, and of course there's nothing really Irish about it at all. It's just called O'Shamrocks, and like they've got like prominently, bottles of Jameson or whatever. But that's
like a fair amount of the employees are Asian engineering students from GRC.
Right, exactly. So yeah, that's the place he goes to. Again, he really, when it comes to his diet, it's mostly like Hot Pockets, Pop-Tarts, just like stuff he keeps around the house because he doesn't eat much.
Right, but he's not a plan ahead kind of guy. He's like always living on the margins, like just sort of grabbing shit when he remembers to eat.
Sort of. I mean, he's always got a stock of Hot Pockets in the freezer. Like he doesn't forget to have food. He just eats when it occurs to him.
Sure. Okay. All right. So golf. Where is the golf course? There are probably more than one.
Yeah, because there's a lot of corporate stuff. Like they're building a lot of new golf courses right now, but the main one is probably on the southeast side. So the way the geography works around here is it's more mountainous to the west than the east. So it's easier to expand to the southeast than any other direction.
Okay. So is he a member of the club or?
Yes, in the sense that he pays for a membership.
Not in the sense that he's like good buddies.
One of the boys.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what is it? It's a country club.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just Golden River Country Club.
Golden River Country Club.
What about like driving ranges or kind of gimmicky things like Top Golf? Is there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, was Top Golf a thing in the 90s?
I don't know, but we can make up our own thing and say that it was. Let's call it drunk driving.
Oh, that's actually really good.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and copyright that. Nobody steal that from me.
Yeah, Top Golf was founded in 2000. But yeah, so this is Top Golf before Top Golf. So this is big in the winter too.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I think that's at the mall.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Which is close enough that he can bike there too, which is convenient.
Sure, which is a nightmare in the winter.
Right, but he's got snow tires.
You're right. He put snow chains on his street bike.
It seemed like a good idea at the time, but he was pretty blasted.
Yeah. What else is new?
Okay, so yeah. And I'm already getting away from the tone that I declared, but that's fine.
No, I mean, I think
don't
that's
give a
great.
shit.
So there should be like an indoor gun range as well, and he frequents that.
Okay. Yep.
Because we're also in the Midwest, so guns and shooting, pretty popular.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely there's got to be a big like whatever Bass Pro Shops is called in our world presence here.
Yeah.
So, I imagine a lot of hunting, fishing, camping, off-roading, that kind of stuff.
And again, there's also as Jack mentioned earlier, there's a huge reservation to our north. We're just south of the Cheyenne River Reservation.
There are multiple reservations to the north.
Yeah, Standing Rock Indian Reservation is just north of that. But like we are directly abutting. Although, well, actually, I think technically we're inside of Cheyenne. Oh no, we're not.
No,
Well, let's be clear.
outside.
You can't indirectly abut. So
Thank you.
I want to clarify that for everyone listening.
On the other side of the Missouri River to our north, that is Cheyenne.
Yeah. Okay.
Which means there's another attraction thing is there's because of the exploding popularity of this town, there is a casino in Cheyenne.
Right. Well, I think there's something we haven't addressed yet is in addition to all the hunting and fishing, or the hunting stuff that we've described, like at the top of the dam, there's a big fucking reservoir.
Yes.
And so there's a ton of boating and stuff like that going on up there. But before we get to that, back to
Simon.
Back to Tim Bars.
Real quick, one thing for Simon, if you don't mind, is one of the things that he does every week is so I mentioned his brother Damien earlier, who is a history professor at Golden River State. He was able to he started dating a Catholic girl in high school, and that's when he started to realize that his family was part of like a collective. And he got the two of them out of it right before their parents died. He is now a super strong Catholic, and he's always trying to convert Simon. So every Saturday night, Simon goes to Damien's house to have dinner with him, and then every Sunday morning he goes to mass with Damien.
Where does he go to mass?
Right, that's what I was getting at. So there's the Catholic church is probably on the northeast side.
Yep, in the Old Money area.
Yeah. And I didn't have a name for it yet. I'll come up with that and send it to you at some point.
Okay,
but,
the Catholic churches, are those the ones that are like Our Lady of something?
Yeah, Our Lady of whatever. Our Lady of Engineering Disciplines.
Our Lady of O'Shamrocks.
Our Lady of O'Shamrocks. I wonder if there's a Catholic church
Name generator.
name generator online.
I like how you're making this character like everything you hate. He's a religious alcoholic.
I don't hate religion.
Cop.
I don't believe
Okay, so back to Tim Bars.
Three Visions of Awe Harvest Church. I did find a church name generator, so I'll generate ones until I like one.
Okay. So back to Tim Bars, if that's allowed, if that's all right.
That's fine.
So we've talked about how you live off campus in what I imagine is a very annoyingly noisy apartment complex.
Yeah, very similar to my real life situation. There's a lot of extraneous and unpredictable just acoustic issues.
But at least since it's the 90s, the music is better than it would be now. You frequent Stella's Diner, you work at an unnamed defense contractor on the other side of the river to the northeast. But what do you do when you're not at work?
So I do guest lectures occasionally at the university. Just part of the, we're the company's tied into the university. It's a very beneficial relationship for us to have. And so a lot of my off time is spent sort of preparing material, doing mentoring. But that's, it's almost like a second job. But beyond that, in terms of actual free time, Tim plays the French horn and is he's a music guy.
Does he play in the Golden River Philharmonic?
Sure, yeah. He's auditioning. He hasn't gotten in.
Okay, so the Philharmonic, is it a Is it mostly like other professionals or retirees out in town, or is this something that the university puts on? I mean, I imagine either way, the group has an agreement with the university to use their facility.
Yeah, and the university has an arts endowment, I think.
Yeah.
French
So
horn.
it's the school has its own band, but then there's also just there's a band that is specifically for people like Tim who are not professional musicians, but they want to have something to play in. So it's more of a fun group. They're not
Sure.
Nobody's
Oh,
doing
I'm
it
sorry.
to
That's
make money.
What I meant by professionals wasn't professional musicians. It was like people who have day jobs.
Yeah, this is a like if you have music as a hobby, you can join this group and
Okay.
you put on concerts and people have a good time.
Is Tim good, or is he like struggling with this
all right.
audition?
He's very good technically, but he only has one volume, and that's forte.
It's a good quality for a French horn player to have.
Yeah, just fucking.
He's always
blast it.
He really likes Lord of the Rings.
It's also he's very staccato,
Oh, okay.
so it's like
He
blurts.
really hits.
Yeah.
So you said he's good technically, but what did you mean by
But
that?
not at playing the French horn, exactly.
he hits the notes perfectly. It's just they're the wrong volume and the wrong length.
Okay, so he's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of like the Guitar Hero style of play.
Yes.
Okay.
He I know it's too early for it, but he has dreams one day of creating a game called Trombone Hero or Trombone Champ.
So I randomly generated this church name that I really like. Two Kings of a King's Vineyard Church.
Okay, good.
I like that. Two Kings of King's Vineyard.
I'd like there to be a confusing apostrophe, though, like it's King apostrophe S Vineyard, so it's not clear which of those Kings Vineyard it is.
That's great. I really like that.
And that is a maybe source of some confusing legend and debate.
Yeah, two kings of singular King's Vineyard.
Yes. It's like, is this an error? Is it? Yeah, like
Yeah, and so everywhere you see it written, it's different. And there's a lot of debate. It's like the old "Don't Tread on Me" flag, where people are like, should there be an apostrophe there, or like why isn't there?
well, and there are a lot of I think there's some tension between like the old guard in the church and the youths, where they have there are a lot of like 2KKV shirts out there.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's great. Perfect. Love it.
All right. Well, so already I'm very happy with the way this is coming together.
So who are some important people in the town? I think is something to talk about too. Sorry, not to cut you off, but just before we...
Well, I mean, that's precisely what you did, though.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no step on snack. Yeah.
Let's see.
That's the better version.
The important people thing is tricky because depending on what you do, like, you may not know any important people. Like, for example, it would make total sense to me if Tim Bars has no idea at any given time, like, who the mayor is or anything like that.
Yeah,
Whereas
he's not involved in politics at all.
Simon would absolutely know, given that he's part of the local government.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I think, like, forces within the town and stuff like that is something I want to spend a little more time on personally. I'll use some of the stuff that you made, Shepard, and then I'm gonna change and add, and some of it is for my own notes, and some of it I'll put out to you. So I'm gonna hold on to that one for now.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm very happy so far with like the geography stuff that's coming along, and I think once we're done today, because we do have a fair amount of time before the next session, I'll put this together into a map. And I'll add another couple of bullets and I'll send it to the two of you and we can just sort of shoot it back and forth until we're happy with it.
Yeah.
Sure.
But the goals I have here are like, well, it's a couple of things. First, and maybe we should have said this up front, part of Delta Green is something called home scenes. So I already described bonds that each character has, these bonds, these personal relationships that provide you with some mechanical benefit. But in general, the way that you're going to act with interact with those bonds is at the end of a session or I guess at the end of a given investigation, maybe. We'll specifically do this thing called home scenes, where you can decide that you're either going to try to spend some time with your family or have a vacation, or depending on what you saw, maybe you're trying to get like therapy or something along those lines. Either trying to regain some sanity or to restore a relationship that maybe you have neglected while you've been running around doing other things. And so having an actual background of like, when we've been doing one shots, it's just, hey, throw a character together and then we're going to start the scenario by them getting on a plane and they're like, the story of their day-to-day life doesn't matter. That's not how it's going to be here. Your characters have a life that is actually going to be interrupted by having to do some kind of investigation, and things that happen to you may have like clear real life consequences. So in addition to if something happens locally, like things that are part of your everyday life may be affected, or you'll at least know where these things are and how they impact the community. So
Right, like if the mall burns down, like that's a huge problem.
sure, right, because you can't go to drunk driving anymore.
Right, or if O'Shamrocks closes down, like I might just jump in the river.
Right, that's devastating. Yeah. Okay.
Here's a question that I think we should probably answer.
Go.
Our characters, do they know each other? And if so, how? I think it makes sense for them to already know each other.
Sure. So if so, how? Because right now your worlds don't overlap at all.
Right. So were we in the same high school class? Because we're both local.
Yeah, we could go with that. We were buddies, and we kind of keep in touch. Obviously, our paths have diverged in life, but
Okay. But I think so far the only thing that you have in common, other than going to high school together, is that you both bike sometimes.
yeah.
Right. So I think we do need to be a little closer than that. Like I was saying, we were high school classmates as like that's the start of our relationship. But
Sure. Okay. So what do you do together? So let's say you guys are high school buddies.
We play
what did
Delta
you say,
Green
Jack?
together.
I said we golf together.
You golf together. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you are both members at the Golden River Country Club.
Right.
Yeah.
Neither of you are particularly affluent, so maybe you don't feel like you fit in that well.
Yeah, so we both show up to golf, this is years ago, and like we're both clearly like on the outside of, we're not the executives, we're not the old money, we're not, whatever. We're not the police chief. And so we kind of gravitated towards each other, and then, became a golfing twosome.
Okay. So when do you golf together?
Probably,
You
it
said
would
Saturday
be
nights and Sunday mornings are out for you.
right, I was going to say Saturday morning, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Saturday morning, is it easy for the two of you to get a tea time, given how, poor you are?
Yeah, I think as long as we're showing up early enough, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Like 2 a.m.
Right.
No, I mean, they want to play golf, they want a tea time of 9. We're at like 7:30.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. So you guys are you're there in the morning. Okay. So you golf together and you keep up with each other that way. So
Right.
So
and
your
I have
relationship
gone to one
with
of his
each other is
concerts.
really-
I didn't want to tell him that it was pretty bad.
but it's a hobby kind of based relationship. Like this, both of you, this is your escape.
Sure. Well, and so we've ended up talking quite a bit because, it's a good opportunity to talk. We usually walk the course, much to Jack's character's chagrin because he's a big fatso. Jack, what's your character's name? I already forgot.
Tim Bars.
Tim Bars, yeah. We usually walk the course, and so, we spend a lot of time talking.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so you guys are both pathetic single dudes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this leads us into a bonds question, though. Who are your bonds? And we'll start with Tim.
Let's see.
It sounds like the two of you are a bond.
Yeah, that would work.
Sure.
I'm gonna say that trying to think of like backstory here. I'm gonna go with my students. I feel a strong dedication towards the like young professionals that I'm trying to bring into the professional world.
Okay.
So I think with Delta Green, it's usually not a group, but a person.
I'll play ball with the group thing. Just understand that we may have to modify some mechanics slightly to adapt to that. But yeah, now do you have any? So you're kind of a like frequent guest lecturer, as you described it. Is this a like what level is this happening? Is this like for the freshmen, or is this for more like graduating seniors sort of thing? Like, is this a small group, large group? What level of work do you do with them?
I work with the master's program for engineers.
Okay.
In like a lab context.
Okay, so this is probably the same group of people that you interact with professionally
Yes.
when you're coming to the university for data.
Yep. They
Okay.
they help me find the stuff that I need when I'm hitting them up for, stuff for my job.
Gotcha.
And then-
Okay, so this is genuinely a give and take. Like it's not just like you're over there lecturing. Like if they're master's students, they're in some sense already engineers that are doing work that you often need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like we're like very officially affiliated and tied in with the university.
Nice.
So I've got
Okay.
a small group of students, because it's you've already filtered out a lot of people once you're into the master's program, that I frequently work with, and they're like my kids almost.
Any of the faculty?
Less on the faculty. I guess probably the dean of engineering is somebody I would just have to interface with a lot, so we're on friendly terms, but we don't like hang out.
Okay.
He's not part of our golf group.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we have Simon. We have your students. What else?
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
so based
say that my one of my my one surviving grandparent, is gonna live in town, and I am taking care of her.
Is she in a home or a retirement
home.
community or
She cannot live by herself.
Okay. So this is like you basically you go visit her, but she's taken care of by staff. Mm-hmm. Okay, so where is that?
Where would the old folks' home be? Probably not in the business area.
Southeast side, I think.
Yeah.
Southeast side in the, because this will be a newer
Like
stuff.
East.
Yeah, so this is the Temperate Valley Retirement Community.
It's the two queens of Queen's Harvest retirement home.
It's
This
near the
one-
golf course actually, because some of the more able-bodied retirees use the golf course.
Yeah, there's like a once a month, like Thursday, that they're allowed free reign over it, and that's it.
Oh,
Her
we haven't
name's
talked
gonna be
hospital.
Carol.
Where is the hospital?
So there's probably a couple, like, there's a clinic on the northeast side, but I'm thinking the, like, southeast side, relatively close to the river, there's probably a really big hospital.
Yeah, I think by a lot of the corporate infrastructure. Closest major airport is probably in Pierre.
Yeah, I
that
think
makes
Pierre
sense.
has a regional airport.
Right. Yeah. This place is not big enough to support its own.
No, I mean, Pierre isn't either, it's just a state capital.
All right. So what about Simon? What bonds does Simon have?
Yeah, it is called the Pierre Regional Airport. So Simon only has 3 bonds. It would be Tim, and then his brother Damien, and Damien's wife, Anita.
And do Damien and Anita have children?
Yes, they're Catholic, so they've got like 7 or 8.
Okay.
Damien's older, so I think they probably 7 or 8 is probably a bit much, but they probably got like 5. And so the kids ranging from like 10 to newborn.
Nice. Okay. Okay. So he's got Tim. He's got family. Anything else?
No, that's the 3 of them. Tim, Damien, and Anita.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anita does not particularly care for Simon personally, but feels an obligation to, be kind and, be a little protective of him. Damien really likes him, but he's really, really biased. Mm-hmm. And then Tim is Simon's only friend. People at work don't like him. He's a bit of a paranoid misanthrope.
Okay. Well,
And he keeps getting pulled over for drunk driving.
I think that's really all I wanted to cover at this session. I have a lot to work on now with respect to making the map and kind of pulling this all together in a format that all of us can reference as we play, and we can publish somewhere. There's really no good place for us to,
And
like,
there
no
never
good
will be.
repository of information.
Yeah, there's really no way for us to put out information to the people.
But we'll put together something like that they can see. But I mean, unless either of you had additional stuff you wanted to cover, I think I want to wrap it here.
No, I think that's pretty good. I think the only thing might just be generating some names for the major firms in the area, because I keep talking about how it's like, it's a big infrastructure town.
There's
Like,
gotta
okay,
be a
well, who are
company
these people?
name generator.
Sure, we
And
just need
so-
to decide on something and have just like a little Wikipedia page for Golden River about, the big things here.
And yeah, I would say over the next couple of weeks, go ahead and just shoot stuff like that in to the chat, and I'll add it to the map.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Because I had made a map for that one shot I did a while ago that included like everything that was important to a town, like where's the sewage treatment plant, where's the cemetery, stuff like that. So yeah, obviously we don't need to add everything to the map. There is a Bass Pro Shops on this map.
Of course there is.
Like a giant Bass Pro Shops pyramid.
Exactly, yeah. There's also actually a lot of really funny references on this map that I don't remember making, but anyway. Where's the orthodontics office? Mm-hmm. Is there a Taco Bell here?
Well, it's good to be back. I'm glad we're
It is
doing
good
this
to be
again.
back. Yeah.
I'm excited that we're going to be playing Delta Green, and I'm also excited that we're doing it right. Like, we're going to set up a campaign where there's actual investment in characters and a location.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm going to call this one Session 0. And then so when we come back for Table Talk, it'll be 0.5 and then Session 1. I think that makes sense.
Yep, I agree. And I think I'll send you guys more details on things that we need to prepare before Session 1. But, what you can expect at a minimum are things like a specific date that we're starting on, and maybe some, things that you've been tracking in the local news or something like that. But then we will start. One other big thing that I forgot to mention is I am planning on running this as a closed table. So, when your player characters split up and do different things, one of you will have to leave the voice chat. So we will be careful to make sure that doesn't go over long, so that you're not just sitting in silence for too long somewhere. But that way, we maximize the mystery element and minimize any potential metagaming, which I think can be particularly troubling in Delta Green.
I wonder if that's almost sort of pointless because we are doing a podcast. And so, like for me, I have to listen to it when I edit it. And so that secrecy can only survive as long as the end of that session.
I think that's all I need.
Okay. So then, yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point, but yeah, that's enough for me.
Okay. I did have a recommendation for the name of the campaign. So like, how do we abbreviate it? The way I had been doing our episode names was like COS Session 1 for Curse of Strahd. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking it's GRU, Golden River Underground.
Maybe. I like that, but I want to think about it.
Okay, well, let me know in the next couple hours because I'm going to be posting this as an episode.
I approve of it.